This is a video on how to take a business from idea to prototype to physical product. Kendra DM'd me on Instagram and asked when I started my company Expression Med, which later grew to a multi-million-dollar brand, how did I, as a high schooler, take that from just an idea to something that I could hold and then use at pitch competitions so that I could win $116,000 at pitch competitions so that I could afford to build it into a product without investors. And how did I do all that professionally at a young age? So I am just going to dive into talking about that. This is going to be like a no edits type of thing because I'm low on time. So if I'm rambling, feel free to skip around in the video. So I can totally relate to this question. When I was in high school, I remember watching The Profit, which is a great show for entrepreneurs to watch, and the classic Shark Tank. And I had so many ideas. I had an idea notebook. I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I really wanted to make my own money, create my own job. And I remember asking my dad if I wanted to start a business, if he would lend me money to do it. And he said yes. And that is like, I never ended up taking money that I didn't pay back. I eventually had to borrow some for cash flow when we were like tripling our sales every month. But that was such a privileged thing for him to be like, yeah, I would totally lend you money to start a company. And then I was like, oh, wait, I have no idea how to start a company. I just have these ideas of what do I do next? And so the answer of what I did next was I looked online for different entrepreneur summer camps because it was very overwhelming. I wanted to get all the answers at once. I will give you all the answers at once in this video, but this is the process I did if you want to go deeper. I found a summer camp at the University of Pennsylvania called Endeavor. I was able to be housed on the UPenn campus for 6 weeks and basically have all of my questions answered by experienced entrepreneurs and be taken through a curriculum of how to start a business. And 6 weeks in a live-in program is very thorough, and so I feel like there's more than I can explain in this video, but that was a start. So tangibly, the first thing I did when I wanted to start a physical product was write down all my ideas and see which one was the easiest to build. I figured that if I learned kind of the clunky way for the easiest one and it didn't work out, then I would go to the next most difficult one, then the next most difficult one. For example, if I wanted to build an app at 17 years old with no coding experience and no connections to developers, that would be really expensive and really difficult. So those ideas weren't what I looked at. One of my favorite ideas that ended up becoming the company that I've run for the last 8 years was to make adhesives for continuous glucose monitors. You can look up my company, expressionmed.com, if you're interested in that. And I just wanted to make a new type of tape. So the first thing I did was investigated what existed on the market. So I did several months of customer interviews in which I found people through endocrinologists and Facebook pages for diabetic families online who had issues with their adhesives staying on or didn't like how they looked, and I would interview them to figure out how they fell off. Was it because they were in the shower? Was it because they were an athlete? Was it when they put on their clothes and their clothes snagged on their devices? So I really got a full picture, a more in-depth understanding, and I also took those interviews beyond just the product itself, and I asked them, like, what other problems do you have in your life as it relates to this device and this condition? And then I found things like people were allergic to their devices, and then I developed a tape that would prevent those allergic reactions, so people who thought they could never use their product again, like their actual product, they could use it now. So that was a plus that I wouldn't have thought of if I didn't do all of those user interviews during the prototyping phase. I also learned that people who wear diabetic devices hate working with insurance companies. One, because insulin is expensive and I can't fix that, unfortunately, not yet. I need to get smarter and more connected. But at the time, I learned that if their devices fell off and they would need a tape, they would also have to call the the device supplier, like the person who's going to mail them the device. They had to call their doctor to see if they could get approved to have more devices, and sometimes they couldn't. So if their tape fell off, they couldn't get more devices, and they would have to go back to pricking their finger like 12 times a day, which made my tape product even more valuable. So I'm glad I asked about their other problems. They would have to call the doctor, the insurance company to see if it was covered, and the device um, distributing companies. They'd have to make all these phone calls, and it was such a pain. And so I really valued those interviews. And then for the actual prototyping, I looked at what tapes people were using. They were using Tegaderm by 3M. They were picking up tapes from their pharmacies. So I bought all the tapes from the pharmacies, and I didn't actually prototype a designed adhesive on those because they all, for lack of better terms, sucked. Like, they wouldn't even stand for a full day of me showering, and I'm not even wearing a device. So after that didn't work, I ordered a bunch of adhesives from manufacturers in the United States and overseas. Like, you can just go on Alibaba and order anything these days, and all of those tapes didn't work as well. And so I went a little more deeper into the science of what even is an adhesive and where can adhesives be improved. So I went to different science labs at UPenn. I went and talked to people at the UPenn Children's Hospital. I visited the 3M campus and talked to their innovation team. I talked to every single person I could about adhesives, because if I was going to make an adhesive, I wanted to make the best adhesive. And then, because I knew that marketing and sales and hiring would take so much of my time, I wanted to really make the product right the first time. And so once I found out like the material composition of what I wanted to build, I reached out to manufacturers, and the cliche, like, call 20 manufacturers and one will entertain the idea of printing a prototype for you. That's pretty much what happened. So I called many different manufacturers, and I was like, I want to make this medical tape. I want to print on it in this way. And most of them said that they wouldn't do that. They would dye the medical adhesive. They would print on the liner that you peel off and throw away, but they wouldn't like do designs on medical tapes, which I thought was crazy, because like, hasn't Johnson & Johnson been doing that with Band-Aid for like decades? But I finally found someone who would print and build the material that I wanted, and they didn't trust me at all because I was a 17-year-old with no credentials. And so they were like, no, like, we could do it, but not for you. And I was like, what would it cost? You got to play the game. If it's a business world, got to do the business thing. And they were like, you can pay us $1,000 to try to print the way you're saying that you want this to be printed. We don't think it's going to work. The material's too thin. It's going to rip. If it does work, we'll take $1,000 off your purchase order. So it's like you didn't even pay us to try it anyways. But if it doesn't work, you lose the $1,000. And I was like, I know it's going to work because I talked to scientists. Like, I know what's going on. I know what I'm doing. But yeah, sometimes you have to pay when you don't have credibility, which is fine. And at the time, $1,000 was so much money because I was a child. But it was worth it. And so that was a prototyping thing. And so then, even though I had found a manufacturer who would make the material and print on it for me and send it to me in like a very consumer safe way, I didn't have a lot of money more than the $1,000, and then how much I paid for all the prototypes. And so I had these little heart-shaped prototypes, which was my first product, and I gave them to the customers. And the customers were like, we don't want your little heart shapes for insulin pumps, which is one of the products people with type 1 diabetes use. They wanted me to make tapes for glucose monitors, which is a separate product that people with diabetes, hypoglycemia, different conditions use, and it stays on like 7 times as long as the insulin pumps. And I didn't have any money, so my prototyping phase was then extended. And so I talked to my manufacturer and I asked for a sample roll of the material, so that I could, give it to customers without paying for the whole process of printing. And so I would cut out the designs by hand and color them with fabric markers and send them to customers. It was literally arts and crafts. Like, you know, when there's a backing on a sticker and there's no slit, so you kind of got to like peel away the edges and it's like annoying. That's how my product was. It was very clunky, not professional, not 100% built in a clean room, which could have been, you know, bad, but it wasn't. Um, and yeah, and people were paying me $4 or $5 for these handmade things, and that really made me realize that once I got to the point where I could afford more print plates and production and all these manufacturing things that I needed, that it was really going to be a good business. And so I spent my entire summer after my senior year of high school hand drawing like 200 designs a week, and art is fun. But drawing the same designs 200 times a week is less fun than making like nuanced art when you feel like it. I watched the entire like 2 seasons of the series Quantico, but I didn't actually see it. I was just listening to it and like drawing the same design over and over again. And so, yeah, that was my prototyping phase. It was stressful, lots of ups and downs. If you have more specific questions about your prototyping phase, or if you want to book a mentorship call with me, just DM me on Instagram. And I hope this video was helpful. Also, if you are a student, you should 100% try to join business competitions. Getting funding as a young person is so easy when funding could be like you pitch for 15 minutes and win between $1,000 and $75,000. Like, it's insane. Those types of opportunities do not exist for adults. So I applaud you for starting this while you are young, and I wish you the best of luck.